days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about an interesting topic. That is, big returns could shape the 49ers. And what exactly do I mean? Well, there's been a lot of injuries, of course, around the San Francisco 49ers. And with that, a lot of people are wanting them to make a move, wanting them to bring in a big-time player. But some of the guys who are coming back are actually going to shape the 49ers' decision. And it's easy to say that because there's one former 49er who has been potentially interested in coming back, and I'm going to talk about him in this episode. And he said the 49ers got a lot to deal with right now. This is on Twitter. He said they got a lot to deal with right now, but when they get closer to finalizing that 53, John can give me a call. And so it's one of those times where you have guys who are thinking about potentially making a return to the Bay, but you have guys coming back. You have Jacob Cowing. You have Andre Dillard. You have guys working back. You got guys working on the side field like Sam Okuwanu or Robert Beal Jr. or Renardo Green. Guys are getting close, and that's going to impact how the 49ers handle the rest of the offseason. Kyle Shanahan just said in his presser, the 49ers would rather be able to go with the guys they have in-house, but injuries are making it more difficult. So right now, they're getting guys like Robbie Chosen. They're bringing guys in, off the street that did not make 53-man rosters last year. And they're trying to make it work. They're trying to figure this thing out as they try to stay financially solvent. They're trying to make sure they stay under the salary cap. And so we know that they've got money to play with, and yeah, they could probably go get Gabe Davis. They brought him in for a workout, but what was it that Devontae Adams said? They were trying to, get a cheaper price. I can't remember the exact term, but he was basically saying, hey, they weren't willing to pay market value for me. They're trying to give me wholesale. That's what it was. And maybe that's what they're trying to do with a guy like Gabe Davis. So it's interesting how the 49ers are going about this, but the guys who are coming back, who are currently on roster, are going to play a big role in deciding what they ultimately do. Because you do have guys that can come in right now and compete, and we have question marks about this roster, and some of these guys coming back could answer those question marks. And if they do, well, then the 49ers don't have to go make a big move. Maybe they can be subtle and let these guys kind of step into roles and become big-time players for this football team. What we do know right now is this team is a little thin in certain areas. Depth-wise, they've had just too many injuries at key positions, and right now it looks thin. But what will it look like when the 49ers get to week one? That is the key. Right now, the 49ers haven't lost a lot of players for a long period of time. Maybe, somebody that we really like Jordan Watkins being out a month, that's difficult because we wanted to see him get better. And Kyle Shanahan even said, he thought he was someone that could help the team early, but he needed the reps at practice. He needed the reps during the preseason. So it's going to be a setback for sure, but at least it's a month and not 3 months where he's going to be out most of the season. It's a situation where he's going to be back pretty close to the regular season. So it does put him in a bad position. But with that being said, what do the 49ers have that could step in right now? We're going to be talking about that in this episode. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening on audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. If you feel like it, please give me a 5-star rating. You feel like I deserve it. I really appreciate that. And of course, if you're going to bet, use FanDuel. FanDuel, the title sponsor of 49ers Cutback. They have standard bets, player props. I was checking out some of those with David Bierman. Episode just came out earlier today. You can check that out if you're into betting. Same game parlays and quarter-by-quarter action. FanDuel just has all the stuff, and the 49ers are favored week one at Seattle. So if you're into betting, check out FanDuel. And what I'm really into is talking about the San Francisco 49ers. And I think one of the key returns is going to be a big determining factor in what the 49ers ultimately do when potentially signing a player at the wide receiver position is going to be Jacob Cowing. Now, it stinks that we couldn't see Jordan Watkins and Jacob Cowing on the field together, right? We'd all love to see 2-4-3 speed guys that could stretch this thing vertically, but could also create separation when they get in and out of their break. We saw it a little bit with Jordan Watkins, right? He got the vertical up the seam, made a great catch, a great throw by Mac Jones, and you saw some potential. And that's something we saw from Jacob Cowing last year. Now, very sparingly, but occasionally he would get the whole shot play down the field, most of it in the preseason, couple late, season things we saw from Cowing, and you've seen him make some plays. And all the conversation during the offseason had been how well Jacob Cowing was doing. All the coaches, the other players, super excited about the work he put in, the work he did to his body, the way that he was looking and playing. They were really hyped up about what he could provide this football team. And early in the season, the 49ers need help because Demarcus Robinson's appealing a 3-game suspension. What's that going to mean? Well, likely the suspension is going to be held up. Maybe it'll get reduced a game, but the likelihood is he's going to be out the first 2 to 3 games of the season. So you're down one guy there. You've got Jauan Jennings dealing with an injury. That's concerning. I do expect him to be ready week 1. The same thing happened last year with the calf, and he was ready to go week 1. Ricky Pearsall has been doing a good job since he came back from his hamstring during the offseason. So now it's Jacob Cowing's time. And they need Jacob Cowing to hit, especially now. With Jordan Watkins going to be having a setback, going to be out a month, this is Jacob Cowing's time to shine. Now, 1 day of practice so far, and we'll see what he does at joint practices. My guess is with the Raiders, they keep him on a limited snap count as they monitor and ramp him back in. But I expect him to get a little bit of reps here and there. So with that being said, this is where we need Jacob Cowing to kind of step up and make some plays. And he's going to determine how the San Francisco 49ers look at the rest of the offseason as far as bringing in a veteran wide receiver. And why do I say that? Because when you look at the depth, you're okay with Jauan Jennings, you're okay with Ricky Pearsall. I would even guess the 49ers are feeling pretty comfortable with Russell Gage. And we know that I feel comfortable with Russell Gage as well. So you have a veteran, but you do have times where you need that fourth wide receiver, not so much on the field, but as a part of rotation, right? These guys got to be able to sub out. And I know the 49ers are going to rely so much on 21 personnel, which is 2 running backs and 1 tight end, or 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends. I know that they're going to rely on those from time to time as they try to reinvigorate this run game, but they're going to have times they have 3 wide receivers. And at times they need somebody that can stretch the field vertically. That's not Jauan Jennings' game. He can do it, but I'm saying he's not a burner, right? He's sneaky where he gets out there. Ricky Pearsall, not exactly a burner. He can do some vertical stuff. Demarcus Robinson is going to be out the first 3 weeks, and Russell Gage is definitely not that guy that is going to be a consistent vertical threat. Jacob Cowing, on the other hand, is. And the 49ers' real weakness is they don't have X receivers. Jordan Watkins is an X receiver. Jauan Jennings can do it. He did it last year, but he's not your prototypical X wide receiver. Ricky Pearsall isn't either, even though they can both do it. You need another guy. Cowing isn't exactly the prototypical X receiver, but he could do it at times as well. So at least you get some differences when it comes to skill sets that you can kind of find some matchups. You got, a big corner who maybe lacks a little bit of speed, who's more of a zone corner, right? When you're playing Seattle, you have some of these zone corners. Now, most of their guys are super fast, but you find these situations where you can get matchups for Cowing, and that's what you're trying to look for. But if Jacob Cowing doesn't step up his game, and doesn't become the wide receiver the 49ers are hoping, especially right now with the injury to Jordan Watkins, they might need to go outside the organization and find somebody that can be a pure X. And the reason they don't really want to do that is they're expecting Brandon Ayuk to come back somewhere between week 6 and week 12. I know Shanahan said, we could be week 6, could be week 10. We don't know. I think that that's kind of the hot spot that they're looking at. Sometime at the end of October is kind of where Brandon Ayuk comes back. Do you want to spend on a Gabe Davis? Do you want to spend on an Amari Cooper, who, yes, they upgrade your wide receiver position extensively, but does it also take away from what you're going to have financially next year? 49ers have a plan in place for what they plan on doing this year compared to what they plan on doing next year. They have worked these contracts and worked the money so they can roll over cash. So next year, when the salary cap explodes, they can be players and be able to hold on to their key veterans while continuing to build this roster through the draft and through key free agents. So it's an interesting dynamic, and a lot of it's going to be on Jacob Cowing, and that's tough to say, but with the injury to Watkins, that's kind of what happens. You've got him as the mainstay guy to figure out. Now, who are the guys that are in the mix? I brought up Gabe Davis. He came and worked out with the 49ers early on once he was released from the Jacksonville Jaguars. What's funny, John Feliciano, as soon as he was released from the Jaguars, said, hey, Gabe Davis is a perfect fit for Kyle Shanahan's offense. A week later, he was inside Levi's, getting some conversations going with them, getting a workout. They did not sign him. He hasn't signed anywhere, but he did go on a national podcast a few weeks ago and say he would love to play in San Francisco. He loves the organization, Kyle Shanahan. So there is at least a little bit of a connection there. But I think the money is what's playing a big part in it. He still wants to get paid. And, of course, he's been dealing with injuries in his career. So I'm thinking the 49ers are looking wholesale, and he's wanting to get paid retail price. And I think that's going to be one of the concerns with him. Amari Cooper's made over $130 million in his career. But, you know, if you're making it, you want to make more. And then Matt Mayoko has been floating around the idea of Kendrick Bourne. And this one kind of came up a while back. I did some conversation about it because I had also heard from some of the Boston media members that Kendrick Bourne was kind of on the outside looking in that wide receiver position. And it's remaining true throughout training camp. Right now, there are potentially 7 wide receivers ahead of Kendrick Bourne making this football team. The New England Patriots could cut bait, save some money, release Kendrick Bourne. Now, what they might try to do is trade him for a very low round draft pick. I don't know if the 49ers would be interested in trading away a draft pick the way that they are using draft picks right now to rebuild this football team or recalibrate, as John Lynch would say. So I don't know if that's something. My guess is they would just wait for him to get cut and then potentially bring him in because they do know what he provides. Now, I think that the best option would be Gabe Davis or Amari Cooper, but financially that might not make sense. Kendrick Bourne might be the cheapest option and a guy who returns to the 49ers who they completely understand what he can do, what his skill set is. And, you know, that's a conversation point. I don't know if that's an upgrade over some of the guys, right? I think if you sign Kendrick Bourne, once DeMarcus Robinson came back, Robinson jumps him on the depth chart. Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, DeMarcus Robinson. Is he kind of in that Russell Gage area? Does that take snaps away from Jacob Cowing? You see where the conversation goes. That's why the 49ers are waiting on Cowing. But if Cowing starts showing up and showing out during joint practices, during the preseason, over the next couple weeks, this is a moot point. 49ers don't need to go with that. Then they have Russell Gage. They have Isaiah Hodgins, veterans who can help this football team until some of the young guys are ready. Guys like Jordan Watkins get back, or even Juwan Jennings. So it's an interesting dynamic with the wide receiver position. Now, another position that's getting interesting is offensive line and offensive tackle especially. I don't think anyone was keen on the performance of Spencer Burford during the preseason. Now, it wasn't all bad, but Burford showed some of the question marks and some of the limitations that we've seen since he came out of UTSA. And part of the reason that we all envisioned him as an offensive guard in the NFL. So one of the key problems with Spencer Burford is playing in space. And when you play offensive tackle, you are put on an island more times than not. You have a lot of space. You give up space to the inside. You give up space to the outside. And you've got to be able to move your feet quick enough. And that kick slide's not easy to move and keep balanced and be able to take on a defensive end, especially the defensive ends in this league. And we've seen him get exposed a little bit last week against Nick Bonito. Now, he had some good reps, but we know that it only takes one big sack or one big strip fumble to change a game. And you've got to be really good. Now, part of the reason Burford was better in pass protection when he played guard, less space, also the speed of the interior defensive linemen is mitigated because they're so big. Those guys are over 330 pounds. They just don't move as good, right? They can't be Aaron Donald or Chris Jones. Those guys are freaks. But it helps a guy like Spencer Burford, you know, not have to move as quick laterally. Now, he's got good athleticism. That's not the question. He does. It's just the smoothness in his slide and how he gets out there. I worry about his feet a little bit. And I think we saw that. Now, we've seen some good things from Spencer Burford as well, right? There was a couple of really good blocks that he made. He was able to get Nick Benito on the ground. He did okay when it came to run blocking. So I wouldn't say it was all bad in his first performance. But I do think it opened question marks, especially with the performance of Austin Pleasance, which I thought was a little lackluster. I don't think it was as good as we were expecting, especially with all the hype, from some of the media members about Austin Pleasance throughout the offseason. Now, I've been saying that I thought Austin Pleasance, wasn't quite there. And I think it really showed in this football game. But now the 49ers have Andre Dillard coming back. And it's funny because I do get emails all the time, and my guy Lou has been talking about Andre Dillard. It's like, is this invisible man ever going to get out there? And that's what it felt like. We knew about Andre Dillard. We were excited about Andre Dillard when they signed him. They signed him and Nicholas Petit-Ferrer kind of at the same time, and it was like, okay, we've got some offensive tackles all at once. And Dillard's a guy who comes from the system. He played in the system in Tennessee. He played in the system last year in Green Bay. Should be an easy transition. A guy with first-round talent. That's where he was drafted. And then he just hasn't been able to work out. Is part of it because of Tennessee? Maybe. But last year in Green Bay, they moved him around tackle, guard. And he didn't play a lot of snaps, dealt with some injuries. So what are we getting from Andre Dillard? That's going to be the key. Is Andre Dillard could add a lot to this football team, because if he comes in and works with Chris Forrester and gets reacclimated to this offense and he stabilizes this offensive tackle group, it could also stabilize this offensive line. And why do I say that? Because the 49ers really like to go with a left tackle and a right tackle backup. That's what they ultimately like to do. But it's more and more difficult with current roster construction to be able to carry, 8, 9 offensive linemen. You carry 8, but getting 9 offensive linemen makes it a little bit more difficult. And you have players that you would like to keep. A guy like Connor Kobe, who's starting to make some play, right? Getting some first-team reps. I don't think he's a starter yet, but I think he's putting himself in the mix, which is great. That's what you want to see. But Dillard makes it a little bit easier for the 49ers roster construction-wise. And why do I say that? Well, if he could come in and solidify the offensive tackle spot either on the right side, and take Austin Pleasant's spot as a backup behind Colt McKivitz, or he can step up and challenge Spencer Burford for swing tackle and win, it could free up Spencer Burford to be able to be a more versatile offensive lineman. Because one of the things that I love about Spencer Burford and Andre Dillard as well is ability to play guard and tackle. There's not too many guys in the league that can play guard and tackle and be effective. And you have guys who can play guard and center, right? You have guys who can play tackle, and you could always move them into guard. But guys who could do it effectively, it's a little bit more difficult to find. But these two guys have the ability. Having those two guys be two of your backups could be very important for roster construction because they can play guard. And Spencer Burford's been a starting guard in this league. And Andre Dillard's been a starting tackle in this league. And so he's going to be a big reason on how the 49ers let this thing play out. Now, the Ben Bartch injury is going to complicate things a little bit. We'll see how that ends up shaking out. And that will kind of determine what the 49ers want to do, because if that happens, are they good with Nick Zakelj starting at left guard? Are they going to move him back over? Are they good with Connor Kobe being a starting guard? Will Andre Dillard coming back make them say, you know what, let's go Dillard at tackle, let's go Burford at guard? Because one thing Kyle Shanahan said was they knew they had Spencer Burford, who was competing for swing tackle. They knew they had him to put at guard if necessary. And he started at guard during his rookie season. He was rotating with Daniel Brunskill. We all know that. We know he had a bad block in the Super Bowl. We know that happened as well in his sophomore season. But it's an interesting dynamic. Now, what's getting even more interesting, and we're hoping Andre Dillard steps up and becomes that swing tackle and becomes a guy that can be a key contributor for this 49ers team, because it's inevitable that, right, your left tackle might miss a game or two. But we'll get to see all this in the preseason, which is kind of fun. But what's getting more interesting is I talked about the former player. It's John Feliciano. So John Feliciano, it was a few weeks ago, or maybe it was a couple weeks ago, had kind of hinted like, hey, if you need somebody, John, call me. And it got the wheels rolling. And I had seen a post a while back during the offseason that he said that he was somewhat getting back into shape. He was asked if he was going to start doing, podcasting. And he said that actually he was working on getting back into shape, that he was considering a return. So the knee was feeling better and he was potentially going to give this thing another shot. So now the conversation starts coming up about John Feliciano, and John Feliciano is fueling the flames. Now, he did say point blank that right now the 49ers have a lot of other big things they're worried about, and that once they get closer to finalizing their 53-man roster, they can give him a call. And so he is definitely willing to come back. And the reason that I bring up John Feliciano is because I don't think it's crazy now with some of the injuries the 49ers have faced to say John Feliciano coming back it's definitely a good idea, because depending on what happens with Ben Barch and the injury-prone nature of him and the inconsistent play we saw in week 1 from Nick Zakelj, your questions about who starts at left guard, I think, are legitimate. I don't think Ben Barch had a great performance. Nick Zakelj struggled. Yes, I thought Connor Kobe played well. Drew Moss played well, but I don't think either one of them are ready to be starters right now. And you may disagree with me, and that's okay. I just think from what I see right now, I see a competent Connor Kobe who's going to eventually develop into a guy who may be able to start maybe next year. But I don't think that this is the year. I don't think he's far enough along like Dominic Pooney was. And so I am open, and I think the 49ers may be open as well, to bringing John Feliciano back. You could insert him at left guard, and he would stabilize that left side playing next to Trent Williams. He's already played in the system. He's already played for Coach Chris Forrester. They were very high on him last year. They tried to put him on IR with a designation to come back, and the knee never got right. If it checks out and he's back, John Feliciano is a huge upgrade for this offensive line. I argue he's better than Ben Barch right now. So this is a interesting development for the 49ers when it comes to offensive line. And we'll see, once they get to that roster construction, like he said, if they got a situation where they feel like they need to upgrade the starting offensive line, they can reach out to John Feliciano and he can step in, and that would be huge. Because not only does John Feliciano potentially start at left guard, but if something happened to Jake Brendel, you can move him to center. He's been a Pro Bowl caliber player at center when he played for the New York Giants. So this is a big opportunity for the 49ers. The Kendrick Bourne one, the John Feliciano one, yes. I do like this idea of him potentially coming back, but the Andre Dillard is going to play a big dynamic. Does Burford get moved? Do they take a look at him at guard? Is Dillard going to play well enough at tackle to make him feel comfortable? What happens with that? So it's interesting, but it's good to have Dillard back. And the chances of Feliciano coming back make things a little bit more interesting as well, which, kind of make things fun. Now, if you are looking for great candidates to hire, and it can be hard, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. You get too many resumes and not enough candidates with the right skills or experience. But right now with ZipRecruiter, they find amazing candidates for you fast. You can use ZipRecruiter's pre-written invite to apply message to personally reach out to your favorite candidates and encourage them to apply sooner. Ditch the other hiring sites and let ZipRecruiter find what you're looking for, the needle in a haystack. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get quality candidate within the first day. Try it for free at exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/audio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And another guy who just came back that's going to determine some of the things that happen with this roster is Evan Anderson. Evan Anderson has been an interesting one for me because you see the upside when it comes to run stopping, but when it comes to pass rush, you don't really see it, right? And what made it even more convoluted for his role on this football team was how the 49ers drafted. They drafted basically 2 one-techs. They drafted Alfred Collins. They drafted C.J. West. And so you brought in 2 guys at the same position. And we think C.J. West and Alfred Collins have upside when it comes to pass rush, probably more upside than Evan Anderson. But Now you have three guys who are all run stoppers who do the same thing. And yeah, when it comes to early downs, right, first and second down, stopping the run is a priority. But you also have to have defensive tackles that can rush. And it's gotten a little bit more interesting because Kevin Givens is going to be out to start the season. So with that being said, a guy like Kalia Davis is going to have more opportunities. A guy like Jordan Elliott is going to have more opportunities because they do provide pass rush. And I think CJ West is going to get better at pass rush. But you've got these guys now all built up. How do you build this roster? And Chris Kasarik has talked about the fact he wanted Evan Anderson to lose weight. And Evan Anderson has done a pretty good job from college to the pros, dropping weight and getting in better shape. And he's been playing at over 330 pounds. And we know Chris Kasarik wants him to lose a little bit. CJ West plays about 317. I think that's where they would like Evan Anderson. So that way he can use his lateral quickness a little bit more to put pressure on interior offensive linemen. But right now, he doesn't really have that in his game. And we haven't seen it at training camp. Then he got hurt. But now he returns. And we're going to get a good idea of what he can do. And the 49ers, need him to step up and make some plays for this football team. And he needs to if he's going to make it. Now, I do think it got a lot easier for him to make this football team with the injury to Kevin Givens. But the emergence of Sebastian Valdez is complicating things, because when you talk about traditional three-techs, guys that can penetrate, Sebastian Valdez can do that, right? He's not your prototypical one-tech. He's more of a three-tech guy. I mean, they call him the Hulk for a reason. The guy is completely jacked. And when you see him play, you see some things you like. Now, there's a lot of development, right? He's a raw player still, but there are some things to build on there. And when you look at what Kalia Davis did last week, where he made more good plays than bad plays, I thought that he elevated his game. Alfred Collins and CJ West looked pretty good for their first matchup, and it wasn't out of this world great. It wasn't terribly bad. It was kind of like right in the middle. And I think that's what you want from your young guys, is what do you do with a guy like Evan Anderson, right? Where you have guys ahead of him that do the same thing. Do you keep him on this roster? And I know that might be crazy for people to hear, but I've been talking about this for a while. And now with the emergence of Sebastian Valdez, it gets a little bit more difficult. But Evan Anderson's play is going to determine how this roster plays out. Because if Evan Anderson plays so good against the run that they have to keep him on this roster, that might mean a guy like Kalia Davis or a guy like Sebastian Valdez doesn't make this team. And I think that both of those guys give you something Evan Anderson doesn't, which is pass rush. And Jordan Elliott's going to give you pass rush. He's not going to be as good against the run as the other guys, but you know that already. It's the give and take, right? Him and Kalia Davis are those guys. So do you keep 3 one-techs, or do you keep 2 one-techs and Alfred Collins and CJ West, which they're going to stop the run early on in their career, and maybe they'll develop into pass rushers as the season progresses? Or are you going to keep Evan Anderson too and have 3 of those guys with Elliott and Davis? Are you going to be willing to move on from Sebastian Valdez? I think it would be difficult for the 49ers to keep 6 interior defensive linemen with the makeup of this football team, because you do have so many guys on the edge, and now you have a guy like Bryce Huff, who is a pass rush specialist. And I know he played a lot of snaps last week at the base defensive end, and he did a pretty good job. But that's not what they ultimately want to use him for the most. They want him on third down, where he can come in and rush the passer as a very healthy, capable player. Right now, he got reps because they have injuries. Sam Okuwanu injured. Etor Gross-Matos still not off the PUP list, which we need those guys back. And Robert Beal Jr., who started dealing with a groin injury during the game. Now, Robert Beal Jr. is already working on the side field, so that's good news. And the 49ers returns of Gross-Matos, Robert Beal Jr., and Sam Okuwanu are going to be huge for the makeup of this defensive line. With those 3 guys at defensive end to go with Bryce Huff, Nick Bosa, and Mikael Williams, who's also working on a side field right now, they might need to keep 6 defensive ends. And part of the reason is Robert Beal Jr. is a great special teams player. So remember that when figuring out how you make up this roster. So Evan Anderson and what he does on the field is going to be interesting when it comes to returns. Now, a couple of guys I want to bring up and mention, I'm not going to talk about him too much, but Jair Brown, another guy who's returned, he got a lot of work in team. it's going to be big because right now the 49ers have been rolling with Jason Pennick. Marquise Siegel started last week, and he's been getting first-team reps at practice this week. Richie Grant's injured. So Jair Brown has a shot to lose his spot. And this roster is going to take form depending on how Jair Brown fits in, whether he's starter or backup. Very interesting. I think if Jair doesn't get hurt, he probably doesn't lose his spot. But you give someone an opportunity, they're going to seize it, and that's what's happened. So Jair Brown's in the mix. Going to be interesting. Pennick didn't start, a team yesterday. It was Jair Brown, and it was Marquise Siegel. So that's interesting. And, of course, Malik, when he comes back, will really change things up. Upton Stout could be back. So once he is, then he'll be a return. That'll make things interesting with Chase Lucas, Trey Brown. Who's going to win? How that cornerback room is figured out is going to be, basically hinging on Trey Brown, Dallas Flowers, and Upton Stout. But if Upton Stout could take that spot, it's going to be interesting. That will determine Darrell Luter Jr.'s fate. So kind of interesting stuff. And then the last one I want to say, Jeff Wilson Jr. And the reason I say that is I don't know if Jeff Wilson Jr. is going to make this team. I think McCaffrey, Isaac Guerrero, Jordan James, right? The injuries there, I think they all make it. I think Patrick Taylor Jr.'s got the inside track. So what did they tell Jeff Wilson Jr.? I don't think they told him you're just going to be a camp body. I think they said, hey, you got a shot. And Jeff Wilson Jr., Patrick Taylor Jr. might be in direct competition now to be that guy who ends up winning this thing out. I think Jeff Wilson Jr. has the edge when it comes to running the football. And I know it's not the same Jeff Wilson Jr. we traded to Miami, but he's still got some juice. And we'll see what can happen between him and Patrick Taylor. Taylor younger, does everything right. That's going to be key. You got Corey Kiner at a great performance, and I think he's still in the mix. So big returns could shape the 49ers, and I think most of it is going to be internal. Guys coming back. Renardo Green should be back next week. We're working towards these guys. Yetur Gross-Matos, Robert Beal Jr., Sam Okuwanu coming back. They're going to play a big part in shaping the 49ers in 2025, but also keep an eye on John Feliciano. I don't know if it's going to happen, but he's at least interested. And when he, before last year, he was a very good football player. So it's going to be very interesting. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. This episode was brought to you by FanDuel. So thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.